This empty chair represents the addict who died today, not knowing recovery was possible.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of The Empty Chair for the Addict That Didn't Know Recovery Was Possible. Tonight's a great evening. I have two amazing individuals here with me tonight, and we're in for definitely a good show, for sure. So I just want to go over some numbers of our overdoses in the Merrimack Valley, which is Haverhill, Lawrence, Methuen, and North Andover. Since January 1st of this year, we've had 95 overdoses and 7 fatalities. And again, these numbers are overdoses that we're aware of. There are many that we're not aware of because everyone's carrying Narcan. But these numbers are still high. And the fact that we've lost 7 individuals already this year, that's why we do this show. We want to just put education, prevention out there and just let people know that there's another way of life, another way of living. And you don't have to go that route. So that's why we're here. And I just want to say thank you to all our sponsors who make this show possible. We have Alternative Healthcare, Atkinson Flooring, Discovering Methuen, Enterprise Bank, Essex County Outreach, Essex Flooring, Greater Lawrence Family Health Center, the Haven of Hope, Lawrence Methuen Community Coalition, Meta Addiction Services, Title Boxing in North Andover, R&R Welding and Fabrication. So thank you all. So what these individuals do, as you know, because you purchase, as you'll see throughout the night, there is a those things right there, advertisements going through. Yep. So that advertisement is you pay a dollar amount for that. We're able to scholarship individuals into treatment, into detox, which is really great. We've also scholarshiped individuals to get their CRSW when they didn't have their funds. So we appreciate all of you. Thank you for doing it. Lou, my name's spelled wrong, but that's okay. It's CH, not SH. I'm like, what's that? But at least you got the Caffrey right. So anyways, I just want to thank you to all our sponsors. Thank you to Costa Broadcasting for allowing us to use their facility. And most importantly, to Lou Blasey, who is behind there for his support and believing that recovery is possible.
There, I fixed it. Okay.
Thank you, dear. So the only thing I want to talk about is MVP ASAP held their first event since COVID. And it was the coldest day of the year and people still came out. I was really impressed with the numbers that we had there, considering I was getting phone calls all morning about my pipes broke, my car won't start. It was
we were stuck outside, didn't know how to get in, but it was amazing.
We were stuck outside, didn't know how to get in. So it was, but what an amazing event, a great turnout. I think we had over 22 vendors that were able to show up. And then I think close to 100 individuals. And that was the vendors plus guests that came in. So it was a really a great event as you were there. And I don't know if you learned anything new, but it was all about heal your brain and the body will follow, trying to look at a different way to come at recovery and stop focusing on fixing yourself and just fix the brain first and then see what self does, you know. And 2 amazing presenters. We had Donna Lowe, I can never pronounce her last name, and Mary Valvalita. And I just think they did a great job.
Yeah, they did an awesome job.
It was fun. So also MVP ASAP was also asked to be the guest speaker. We spoke at South Church in Andover. We were the guest speaker at the Greater Lawrence Technical School at their family night. They had us there for dinner. And what I really loved, there was probably maybe 100, over 100. I'm trying to remember. It was a big crowd and these were parents. And that's who we really try to get to because we want to have the conversation with them. And I love that they raised hands and asked questions because there's a lot of times where, you know, Phil's huge on people always saying, not my kid. And this is the first school that actually that we saw this amount of parents participate in regards to their kids and what's going on. They were asking, what signs do I look for? What can I do? And it was a great event. And then most recently, we had Phil Leahy speak at the Heart to Heart Surviving the Storm. And that was held at the Haverhill Library this week. And that was a great turnout, a lot of great speakers. And so we're MVP ASAP, we're staying busy.
Clearly.
Yes, we're awesome. Back on the move. It's like COVID's over. And now we're just trying to continue to create events where we can be present to individuals so that people know where they can go. So some of the weekly events that we have, again, is the Monday night. We have the Circle of Hope, which is with Phil and Fran Leahy. That meets at the Methuen Police Department from 6:30 to 8. This coming Monday, I will be hosting the resource night at the Methuen Police Department. Narcan distribution is at 6 p.m. And then Crossroads Recovery Center from Salem, New Hampshire will be there at 6:30 to talk about their services. I was mentioning to you folks earlier that this is one of the first IOPs for mental health, which I think is amazing. So they have mental health IOP and an evening IOP for addiction. So if you want information on that, come down to Methuen Police Department and listen to Mike Miles from Crossroads. Come talk about what they offer for services, or as always, you can reach out to me. I love telling everyone about the Phoenix Gym. This is for myself, exercise was one of the biggest things that I held on to when I first got sober, because it kept my mind going. It kept me out of my head. And it was just a great way to move negative energy. And Phoenix Gym, they have free gyms all over the place. Our closest one is in Lowell. There's a full list of classes on Facebook. The only requirement is that you have to be sober 24 hours. So check out the Phoenix Gym, Lowell, Mass. And if you have any questions on that, you can reach out to me. Speaking of exercise, we have aerobics. It's not aerobics. It's called Fit and Fabulous. We're from ages 18 to 80.
If you make us get up right now.
Yes, Fit and Fabulous. From 18 to 80, we host Fit and Fabulous. It is dance. It's exercise. We use weights. We use those bands that you put around your legs and you can't walk. But it's fun. It's 5:30 to 6:30 on Tuesdays and Wednesday evenings. We have an instructor, Cindy Bonanno, who kicks our butt, but you work at your own pace, but she's just a great motivator. So another way to lose weight, bring down diabetes, get active, and it's right at Methuen Police Department. So those are the things that we have available. Tonight we have 55 years of recovery between Steve and I, which I think is pretty cool. We are testimony that you can get sober and stay sober, because both of us have. And I'm just here to introduce Steve, who's going to share his testimony, and then we'll hear from Ms. Dani Sinclair. But Steve, you're sober 20 years. Did you ever think you'd be 20 years sober?
Never thought I'd do 20 days.
Amen, right?
Yeah.
And then here you are.
Yeah.
So how did you get the 20 days? Never mind the 20 years.
So I guess right out of the gate, I knew once I started drinking, I drank differently than most of the people I hung around with.
Define differently. Like on top of you, were you doing handstands upside down
A
drinking?
little of both. Yeah, a little of both. But I had a cousin that had some real significant issues with alcohol. And when I was in high school, he ended up doing time up at the old Lawrence jail. He had taken his two boys out to get ice cream and was drinking, and left Lawrence heading back to Salem, and flipped his car, and one of his sons was killed.
Wow.
And, I remember him saying that, he did a short amount of time in jail, but it was a life sentence, knowing that he killed his, I think at the time, 13-year-old son. And I remember having him come and speak at the high school that I went to, Shrewsbury High. And I'll never forget, there wasn't a dry eye in the entire place. And at the time, I was involved in Students Against Drunk Drivers. So it's kind of ironic, the path that I ended up taking. And so I left the house at a young age. I was 17 when I went to college.
Norwich University.
Well, we did a little trial run up at UNH for a year.
Okay.
Yeah, we practiced college for a little while. after I was at UNH and I had gotten into some trouble up there, I wanted to go up to Norwich, and why I'm not sure at the time, but nonetheless, that's where I ended up. And for those of you that don't know much about Norwich, it's a military college in the middle of Vermont, in the middle of the mountains. And I was up there in the early '80s and graduated in 1990. And at the time, about the only thing to do up there was to drink and fight, and I did a lot of both. And I've heard a number of times, people talk about bad decisions and whatnot, and what I've heard is bad decisions make for good stories, and I've got a lot of good stories.
Do you remember them all?
No, I've been told a lot of them, and every once in a while, when somebody calls in that I haven't talked to in a while, I'm reminded of it. But I was at Norwich, and again, I hung around with a group of kids. It was, it was a group of guys from Boston, Worcester, the North Shore, mostly Irish kids, and we were 45 minutes from Burlington, Vermont. And so, when it first started out, for the first 4 or 5 months, we were locked down at school. We weren't allowed to go anywhere. And so then sometime in November of the freshman year, they have what's called recognition. So you're now not the piece of shit marching in the gutters, and you become a cadet, and we get cut loose. And so when I was up there, the drinking age was 18. Not sure if that expedited where I'm at right now or not, but nonetheless, for me, it started with, Friday and Saturday nights going up to Burlington, freshman year, and and the fighting started up there, and it was, I guess back then it was fun. And you didn't look at some of the consequences and whatnot. And then, Fridays and Saturdays turned into Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And, by the time I was a junior at Norwich, it could be 7 days a week, and still able to pull off, the grades to get through there. So I would come back to my room Sunday nights, Monday mornings, and there would always be a yellow sticky on my door saying, Private Heald, come see Colonel Harrison, or come see Colonel Donovan ASAP. So I had a special uniform in my closet that I kept just for those occasions when I had to go up and take my spanking and whatnot. And I had a lot of fun up there. Then come my junior year, this same group of kids that I hung around with, we were out on a Saturday night, and I'm not sure in Vermont where they send bouncers to go to bouncer school, but when you get two groups fighting in the bar, you don't send both groups out at the same time. And that's what happened this night. And it still bothers me to this day when I think about it, because it was a group of local guys from Burlington, South Burlington, and there was a half a dozen of them and a half a dozen of us. And when it was all said and done, and the fight was over and we left, I didn't know if a couple of the kids were dead. And one of them that I had gotten involved with, and it turns out he had about 130 stitches across his forehead, and his jaw was broken, and the cops caught up with us, and next thing you know, I'm arrested with another guy from my group. And you would think at that point I'd start thinking about my drinking. And but you didn't. Up there, it was kind of a badge of honor to
Yeah.
come back and, so I spent a good part of my junior and senior year looking at going away to jail for a year. And at the time, I was a correctional officer for the state of Vermont up in St. Johnsbury. So
Well,
it was, it was a scary time. And I figured I'd wait until the last possible minute to call my parents. But there wasn't much that they didn't find out because my father grew up half an hour up the street in St. Albans. So, there were times he would call up the next morning and say, "Oh, I heard you had a good time last night," as I got lugged out of the hockey rink or whatnot. But again, you and I, we know these signposts and whatnot. And, I talk about this often. One of my roommates, he and I were coming back from Burlington one night, and I remember waking up and looking out. I'm in the passenger seat looking out my side window, and there's flames going by my window. And I looked over at him, and he's out cold driving. We're going like 80 miles an hour down 89, just riding the guardrail the whole way down there.
wow.
And, again, not thinking twice of it. And, early in my freshman year, or actually it might have been even before I get up there, 5 cadets were coming home from Burlington and fell asleep and went off the road, and they were all killed. So it wasn't like I didn't see the writing on the wall. In any event, time moves forward, and it's coming graduation time, and there was a couple of us. We had taken an art class senior year, supposed to be a guaranteed A. Well, this guy changed his mind. He didn't like his reputation, and every senior in the class had like Fs and 30 and 40s and whatnot. So my family was already on their way up to graduation, and we're looking at the board, is our name ever going to get up there? And thank God they did. So the gentleman that was the guest speaker that particular year was a Norwich grad from the 70s. He was I think he was a vice president of NBC, and he gets up there and he starts talking about he heard his record was broken, and he had set the record for the most punishment or the most tours ever to be done at the school. And so I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. My parents are going to be so proud of this. And so, and then you hear a group of guys, my name's being yelled out, like, he'll leave. And I'm like, this is, real proud moment.
Yeah.
So I had met my wife at a ski bar up in Vermont. It was late in my junior year, and it was so anyways, I was engaged in my senior year, and I look back and I don't know how she put up with some of the shit, and I can take an honest look back now, and I put her through a living hell for a lot of years. And so we got married.
Before you jump ahead,
Yeah.
your drinking career really started in college, like in high school. Were you dabbling, and did you come from a family of addiction?
So back then, I really looked at people in my family on both sides as heavy social drinkers.
Mm-hmm.
With the exception of a handful of them.
Yeah.
I suppose if I look back now, I might look differently.
Yeah.
But on the same note, I wasn't going to point that kind of stuff out because I wanted to protect my right to drink.
Yep.
And if I point my finger at them,
Yep.
So and it was probably my junior year
in high
I
school.
started.
Okay.
Yeah, but that was my junior year. It was a quick move to college because, like I said, I was 17. My birthday was in October, So, I was called front row healed from kindergarten all the way up because I was the youngest, or one of the youngest in my class. So fast forward, I know now what I've put my parents through. I remember there was a Christmas that we were supposed to do a big family portrait for Christmas with the whole family, and I was supposed to go home that weekend, and I went out on a Thursday night, and I was in Burlington, and I woke up Friday morning in Winooski, Vermont, lying across live railroad tracks with both of my eyes closed shut, broken nose, and a broken arm, and had no idea how I got there. And again, huge signposts. And what did I do? I mean, I could barely see. I jumped on 89, thumb back to Norwich, and hobbled my way up. And I had to call my mother up and say, cancel the pictures. And she's like, why? And I said, you'll see. And so, it was things like that, one thing after another. And so I got married. We bought our first house. I was 23 when we bought our first house. And that's when I had, I think I had said I was a correctional officer up at the state of Vermont. And when I get down here, I get involved in juvenile corrections. I worked at Boston Secure Treatment for DYS, which was a unit back in the day when there were most of the kids in there were murderers with sentenced to life without parole or violent sexual predators. So it was a real baptism by fire there. And it was down in Rosendale. And so I went from there and worked with the Essex County Sheriff's Department for a while. And then up to another program, a secure treatment program called Centerpoint, which was for DMH, DYS, and DCF kids. And that was up at Danvers State. And
are you a drinker throughout this time? Really? Okay.
Yeah. And especially when we were up at Centerpoint, I mean, it was literally going into work was like going into combat. And it was just about every night we'd be out in the parking lot drinking, or we'd be down at Supino's drinking. And, I can look back at it now and I'm thinking to myself, how do we get home?
Yeah.
So I worked there, became the residential director there, and my wife and I had our second child, and I also was doing construction at the time. So I had a construction company going, and so between building and working juvenile corrections, I mean, it's a drinking environment, and so we had our second child. We had a daughter, Megan, and Megan was about 2 months old when she was diagnosed with a terminal muscle disease. And again, I was still drinking during that time frame, and I was devastated. I was angry at the world, and my drinking took off. And I can remember family members coming to me and saying, "Look, I'll stop drinking if you stop." And I'd say to them, "Don't waste your time," because I'm not. I wasn't prepared to. And so Megan passed away just shy of 8 months, and I spent 2 days up at the cemetery drinking, because the cemetery was right up the street from us and whatnot, and it really took off. And at that point, I made a decision that I needed to not work with people. for a while. We were working with kids, and I didn't want to take my anger out on somebody that didn't deserve it.
Yeah.
So at that point, I got into building full time. Went and got my construction supervisor's license. Built my first house over in Peabody, and and then it took off. I really was building a lot of houses. I built quite a few up in Rowley, Georgetown, Tingsboro, and I'm going to say it was a year and a half, 2 years into that. I wanted to get back working with kids, and I had applied to Department of Youth Services to be a caseworker, like a juvenile parole officer. And I remember getting the call, after the interviews, and I didn't get the position. And the regional director or assistant regional director asked me to apply to the next one. And he said, and I did, and at the next one, I got the position to work. I covered Lynn Court, and he and I had a real frank discussion, and I didn't know till long after that he himself had struggled with alcohol, and he said that I was too raw after Megan passing, and I think he knew that I was hitting the sauce pretty good. So I worked Lynn for a couple of years, and so in that process, I had after that we had 3 more kids. I had my daughter Erin, I had a son Patrick, and then my youngest Bailey, and so I had 4 kids. My oldest Matt, and and my drinking continued. So I had met Tito Rodriguez, who we all know here, and I'm sure most of the people watching the show know Tito. When I think of recovery in this area, or in New England for that matter, I think of Tito. So I met Tito, and I met his wife, Lynn Lee. She was my manager. She was in charge of the Lynn Court and all that, and became friendly with them. And Tito was very instrumental in me getting hired onto the gang unit for DYS.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
And I was still drinking back then, and so I got hired to be the apprehension officer for the Metro region, and so I think at the time I was 29, and went out to the State Police Academy out in New Braintree, and so I was one of the oldest kids in my class out there, and so I'm out there, and I get these 20 and 21-year-old kids, and I'm like, there is no way I'm going to listen to these people, meaning the other cadets out there. So I said, you know what, I'm going to go for class president, because then I can do, I'm in charge. And so I did that. And so, New Braintree is another place out in the middle of nowhere.
It's lovely there. What are you talking about?
Yeah. And so I actually had knee surgery 7 days before the academy, but didn't tell anybody because I didn't want to get bumped out of the class and have to go down the road. And so I was out there for, I think, 18 weeks. And, it was almost like being at Norwich again. And there was a group of us, we'd sneak off at the academy at night, and coming back, drinking, coming back up to the academy, drinking and driving, coming back up to the academy, not thinking twice about it. And, hopping over fences to sneak back in so that, the troopers wouldn't see us going back into the barracks. And, but I got in some of the best shape I ever was in my life.
Yeah.
And when I get out, I get assigned to the Boston Police Youth Violence Strike Force, and some of the most phenomenal police officers that I've ever worked with. And and I think it was there that I started to realize that the people that were encountering the criminals and whatnot, and then looking back at all the juveniles that I worked with, that a lot of this came from family dysfunction, whether it was drugs or alcohol or violence or whatnot. But if I thought the construction world was a place to drink, working in law enforcement, especially down there, it was full of testosterone and a lot of booze.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would do warrants all morning or into the afternoon, and next thing you know, we're down the Erie pub or the Dubliner or whatnot. And again, it's like, how did I get back to Danvers?
Mm-hmm.
And I did, and did it every night. And so I knew early on that I had a problem with drinking. There was no arguing. I had enough people telling me that I did. But I wasn't prepared to do anything about it. And, when I was with Boston Gang Unit, I can remember getting up in the morning, and I have young kids, and I'd be in the shower at 4:30. I'd puke in the shower, get out, get in front of the mirror, clean up, promise God I wasn't going to drink that day, and head off into Boston. And I'd be in a Crown Vic with 3 other cops, and I couldn't imagine what the alcohol content of the air inside of that cruiser
Mm-hmm.
was at that hour.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'd go and do our thing, and I'd be sitting down the Erie pub, or would make it back to Danvers and be down in the office and say, how did I get here again? At this point I'm drinking, well, I'm drinking without my permission.
Yeah.
And go back and do it again. And so I was still with Boston, and it was Bunker Hill Day, June 17th. So I had the day off because it was a Boston holiday. And I remember coming out of my house, and my wife was in the backyard. It was early with the kids, and I had the cordless phone at the time, and I couldn't tell you if she said I love you or I hate you, but I took that phone and I smashed it into 1,000 pieces off of a brick wall or a stone wall, and looked at her and said, something's not right. And I said that I was going to go up to Georgetown, work on a house I was building, and if things didn't change when I get back, I was going to do something about it. Now, I had no idea what that meant at that point in time. And so I did. I went up to Georgetown. I worked on a deck on this house. And at noon, I went down to the Georgetown pub and, had a burger, fries, and a beer, and went back to the house and worked for another 3 or 4 hours. And on the way home, stopped at Supino's and had a gin and tonic, and realized that this was the first time in my memory that I sat down and had one drink and walked away. Normally I would have sat there and they'd have been telling me to leave, at 12, 1 o'clock. And so I got home and I walked through the door and went and made a gin and tonic it was my routine. And I came out back, and Ellen was out there, and I looked at her and I said, I'm not right. And so I was so fortunate that I had a really good relationship with my primary care doctor. And I knew enough to call him. And I called him up and I told him kind of where I was at. And I wasn't at that point thinking I need to stop drinking. I was homicidal at that point, and and the reality is probably suicidal. And so my PCP, Mark Alara, he said, I'd like you to go up to Beverly Hospital and get an evaluation. And I had no idea what that even meant, but I trusted him enough and went.
Mm-hmm.
And so I grabbed my gin and tonic, and I didn't realize I called my mother. And my mother was petrified where I was at. And she called one of my brothers, and somehow they made it from wherever they were to Beverly Hospital in the same time I went from the next town over. And so I got there. I don't know what I said to the receptionist, but next thing I know, there's security's involved. And
And he's in a straitjacket.
yeah. And so, I mean, the blessing in all of that was that bought me a bed upstairs at the Leland unit. And, I remember getting up there and, they do the protocol with the Ativan and the Librium. And so you're in that fog for 24 hours or whatever it was. And I remember coming out of the fog, and I had to meet with some counselor. And I remember saying to her, before we get into any of this talk shit, I want to know what kind of shape I was in, because my memory was really spotty. And I said, specifically my blood alcohol. And so she goes on the computer and comes back, and it was like a 2.2 or a 2.3. And I was like, holy shit. I had a beer at noon, a gin and tonic at like 4:30, and a half a gin and tonic. So this was over a significant period of time. And my BAC was still that high. And, what it said to me was, my body's not processing alcohol the way it's supposed to. And so I'm up there, and I made a promise. I'm like, it's not like I'm going to be able to walk out the door. These doors are locked.
Yeah.
And so I said, I'm going to do whatever they ask me to do. If it means I got to do naked cartwheels down the hallway, I'll do it, as long as I don't feel like I felt the day before, 2 days before. So
That's called the gift of desperation.
Yeah. I remember looking up at the schedule board, and it was the third day maybe, and it said art therapy. And I'm like,
you flunked.
I'm like, pardon my language, are you fucking kidding me? Me and art. And so there was this counselor there, Sally, and you guys will probably remember the little metal stained glass things that you pour different colored beads into.
Yes.
And somebody
You
puts
put
it in a toaster oven, and voila, you got a stained glass window.
You just call us old.
Well, she and I are.
I'm gonna pretend I don't know.
So I'm sitting there pouring these colored beads in, and I just burst out laughing. And Sally, the counselor, goes, Stephen, what's so funny? I'm like, Sally, if my fucking boys knew I'm sitting here in the cracker factory making a stained glass window, my butterfly, they'd laugh me out of the state. But the reality was, that was the first time I was able to hear what I needed to hear. And that's when I heard about AA and, so I spent 11 days up there, and those 11 days were the 11 most important days of my life. Graduating from Norwich, it was a big thing. I graduated from the State Police Academy, number 2 academically, number 1 physically, and still drank pretty well while I was at it. But getting out of there was, it changed my life. And so I started that next day. I went to AA and in Danvers. And, initially I went 3 days a week. 3 times a day for months, because I look at it this way, and and 20 years later I still look at it that I've been given one shot at this, and I don't know if God will give me a second chance. So I kind of keep that fear up front. And and it's worked. So I ended up kind of rehooking up with Tito.
Yeah.
A little bit later, and I was in an AWOL over at Gordon College, and at the end of the 6 months, they have a special guest come in, and Tito was the special guest speaker,
Wow.
and I'm like, I had no idea he was in recovery.
Wow.
And so Tito ended up being my sponsor for a while.
Yeah.
When I went to that first AA meeting, and this is really important, there was an old timer in there. His name was Gil. He's since passed, but he talked about being prepared for the bell going off. And I'm sitting in there like, the fuck is this? I mean, he was an old guy. What's he talking about, the bell going off? And the kid next to me said, he hit me and he said, pay attention to them.
Mm-hmm.
He said, Gil was 25 plus years sober, and he said he's buried a son and a daughter directly due to drugs and alcohol.
Wow.
And I'm like, if somebody can do that and stay sober, I need to listen. And and that's where he talked about building a foundation in AA.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a million different ways to get sober. AA worked for me, and it still does today.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up 3 years after that in Lynn, trying to serve a warrant, and I reached into a car to grab somebody, and they rolled the car window up and locked my arm in it and dragged me down the street. And I woke up at Salem Hospital with essentially a broken neck and a broken back, and my whole world was changed.
Yeah.
Not just physically, but my identity. Because my identity then, I was a cop, and it's over. My days of doing that were over. But people in AA held my hand right through it.
Mm-hmm.
They'd pick me up for meetings. They'd have a meeting with me at the house. And that's where I ended up with Tito, meeting Tito.
Yeah.
And he asked me if I wanted to be a recovery coach.
Yeah.
And that's how you and I met.
Yeah.
And, I think back to how much I learned with you guys up in Methuen. And,
You hated us.
So I went from Methuen, I went over to Salem Hospital, and I was the first recovery coach in the ED there. And I spent 4 or 5 years there. And somewhere along the line, I met Dani.
Which is who I need to transition to, because I'm looking at the time. So he's meeting
He was
you.
doing a good segue for you.
Yeah, so
it's
this is
Lawrence, I think.
Essex County Outreach. So Dani, I want to bring it over to you, and I thank you for all that you do for Essex County, all that you do, especially for me personally, and many of my friends. Like, you're an amazing role model to all of us, and I love not even being in recovery, and you create this thing for all police departments to work together. And what made you do it? Tell us a little bit about it, and just thank you for your time. I appreciate you.
No, don't be silly. Listening to you guys is always inspiring for me.
Uh,
It reminds me why I try to do it. So I, to be fully honest, had gotten pregnant. And so that was back in 2015. And my chief was I was the first female in the department to be pregnant. So he didn't really know what to do with me. So obviously this was the height of the opiate epidemic and everything.
Yeah.
So he said, come up with a heroin policy for our department. So I was doing my research. I didn't want to just do something without researching and doing my homework first. I'd obviously stumbled upon the Gloucester program, was just getting up and running with the Angel program.
Mm-hmm.
Arlington had a really successful program going on. So I was trying to pull bits and pieces from everything. I went to the first PARI conference, the Police Addicted Assistance Recovery Initiative, and Plymouth County folks spoke there. And it was really inspiring. There were a couple of police chiefs that spoke, and how they kind of got all of Plymouth County communicating with one another, especially on this database that they used. We on the front line of the problem see people at their worst. We get the 911 calls, we go respond. We think we're doing the right thing. We bring them to the hospital and then we see them, the next day. So there's got to be a better way. And it was really inspiring to see how they all just collaborated on this database with one another, 27 different agencies there. Essex County has 34. And just trying to find a way of how we could all work together, especially with all these great programs like the program that you help run, and just get people, a different way of law enforcement thinking about how to address the situation.
Yeah.
So with that, we applied for a grant. The city of Newburyport was kind of the figurehead for it. That was back in 2019. COVID obviously hit and sent a lot of different programs back on the back burner. But we adjusted, we adapted. I was fortunate enough to reconnect with Steve. I don't remember how, to be honest. But we talked. He was definitely interested in becoming, doing something where this program was just kind of up and running. Still a work in progress. So he jumped on board with us as the recovery coach supervisor.
Nice.
So it's basically, if there's anything about the program in a nutshell, it's just there's so many different diverse departments within Essex County amongst itself, but nobody is immune to addiction. So it's just literally identifying all of the partnerships that we have throughout all of our communities. How can we all work together? We're fortunate enough to have this great grant, which got renewed up until 2025.
Nice.
So we're just trying to find, the ways to best spend it and be most effective.
Awesome. And what I love about it is the ability we are a huge community. And if I have a Methuen resident that overdoses in another town, I get notified of it. So I go knock on their door and they're like, how'd you know? I'm like, I don't know. Santa told me. And I just think that is so brilliant. And so is that the PM and her husband? Is that what is it?
So Pam and Sean, so Pam's husband, Brian, is actually the coordinator for our program now. So we kind of, I don't know if he's listening or not, but we kind of got him, but we wanted Pam more, I think. So we kind of got him as default.
Okay.
Because she has just been both of them have been phenomenal with just helping structure and organize a little bit of everything. Because I have another full-time job too, and I wasn't really doing the program as much justice as it needed to have. But that's a really valid point so SIMS, the database that Pam and Sean had created, which is Critical Incident Management Systems, was a good focal point to just be able to, we know of an overdose that occurred in my town, but they live in Beverly or Methuen or wherever else. I can jot out this email to whoever the person is in our partnership there that handles outreaches, and then we're not missing people and people aren't slipping through the cracks. So it's, I think this year alone, we've had 16% of the overdoses have been multi-jurisdictional. Wow. So if we didn't have this database, that would be 16% of the overdoses that we had that just kind of, again, fall through the cracks.
Do you have the numbers of how many lives were saved from Narcan? I should have asked you to bring that. I know I asked for the overdoses and everything, or...
Again, shout out to Pam. Yes, she hooked me up a bit.
Nice.
So far, this is just for this year. So this is just strictly from January.
And this is 34 of us, right? Not just Merrimack Valley that you're reporting on?
This is for everybody within Essex County. And again, it's accurate within as many of the departments that we're still working out a few kinks with getting.
I won't throw Andover under the bus ever.
100% reporting.
Yeah.
But the Narcan stat is that it was used in 74% of the incidents we've had so far this year. And 94% of those ended up were recorded as non-fatals.
Amen.
So it just goes to show the power of
absolutely. And that's one of the big things that everyone's carrying. Like when I just think of how addiction has changed in law enforcement, like even just being at CARES for as many years as I have, like it was Jackie and Jen prior too, and just changing the stigma in the police department itself with how you treat an individual, like to get them to understand that this is someone's son, daughter, mother, whatever. And to see police officers really be invested in this is just, it's a beautiful thing to see. And did you ever think it would come to this? Did you ever think like, oh yeah, we're going to maybe arrest them, but we're also going to work with them versus just throw them in jail and let the system deal with it. And we have Essex County where I know if there's someone that I actually had to reach out to you folks recently for a family out of my jurisdiction. And to have that collaboration is just so amazing because part of their family is in Methuen, which is how the phone call came in. Mm-hmm. But I'm not driving to the other cities to say, hey, and because we have this, that family actually had a plan put into place, conversations happening, and just the stress level just went down like this, like, oh my gosh, like how did that actually happen? And it was because of Essex County Outreach. So I thank you for that. I applaud you for getting pregnant and having nothing to do and having to put together some kind of program, you know? So I know you have an office right on 110. Is that like open to the public or is that just where you folks sit?
So again, I'll shout out to the sheriff because he was so kind when they had moved out of that the old OCC building there to offer up an office space for us to kind of have just a location to be able to start basing some meetings out of. I mean, we have a lot of ideas and a lot of things moving forward, especially as we're gaining momentum again and back on track since COVID, having some great staff that are helpful.
Did you all say hi to Erin? She's still with us?
Erin's still with us. She's on a much needed vacation right now. Good. So, yeah. So we allow everybody to get breaks and vacations too. Mm-hmm. So that's at 80 Elm Street off of 110 in Salisbury. Yeah. So as of right now, they're on actual pop-in office hours to be able to come in, but Steve's coordinating doing a weekly meeting that he's going to start hosting. And then again, the goal is eventually to be able to have drop-in hours as well.
Awesome.
From March 6th for Black Balloon Day, we were going to do from 11 to noon. We're going to set up a canopy and a tent out front.
Awesome.
We're going to do some Narcan training and hand out some Narcan for our folks. All are welcome.
Good.
And just kind of just of remembrance for all the folks that we've lost. And again, unfortunately, with Essex County this year alone, there's been 16 fatal overdoses. So obviously there's still a lot of work to be done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And speaking of, I was at court the other day and they said how they really enjoyed having the two of you at the mom's group. The night before the mom's group.
They love Steve.
Yeah, they really enjoyed having you folks there. So thank you for doing that. And just thank you for all that you do. So I also know Essex County offers recovery coaches. Mm-hmm. So if an individual wanted a recovery coach, how would they go about to contacting you to say, hey, I need a recovery coach?
So they can find us on our website. There's a contact page on that, which is www.essexcounty.com. EssexCountyOutreach.com. You'd think I would know my own website.
Why didn't we just do ECO.com?
It's funny, right? When we did all of our, would have been a lot easier. I've gotten that a few times. We also have a phone there too, which obviously isn't manned 24/7. But when somebody's in the office, we would check. Yep. And that phone number is 978-961-7388.
Awesome.
And or you can just track me down at Newburyport PD or Essex County Outreach. And
nice.
I'm always around and I do my best I can to get back as soon as I can.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to put all that information that you gave us into the chat.
Okay.
And that will stay there forever. So if people need to go back, they can review this.
Awesome.
And so we're staying sober day at a time.
That's right.
You're loving life. You're feeling better. You look great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You too.
And I just, it's a joy to be on this journey with you guys. We've been all over the place. And like I said, he did hate us.
Good talk off.
Yeah. It's all good. We all live and learn, the way I look at it is. It's life's journey. Don't ever stop trying to learn. And, if you're out there and your CK has a recovery academy, I saw something. But if you're struggling out there, there's so many, when I think of the resources that are available now versus 1987 when I got sober, there is so much, so many resources.
We've been getting.
I didn't know. Hold on. We're gonna read the comments. So let's see. Phil Leahy saying hi, everyone.
That's Cole's fault.
Kimberly Fall. thank you for all the work you guys do. It's a great way for wellness too. Congrats to Steve.
Hi, Beth.
Hi, Beth. Hi, Dani. Such a pleasure to have been able to be under your leadership.
Like
Keep
says
doing
hi, Mom.
amazing things. Actually, I saved him myself in Southeast. I know someone who saved Social Alone. We are doing our recertification of Narcan work. That's right. I think you're on day 2, if I remember. Blake says, hi, Mom. Hi, Blake. Oh, my goodness. See, Cars
you
having
can
the
thank or blame
recovery
her.
thing. And then Jody, is there a multi-systematic discussion that's ongoing to proactively discuss gaps in the system? Response is, of course, so important, but if collaterals who work with population would get ahead of it, more lives could be saved. So, Jody, I would love to get more of what you're looking for, because these are the things that we like to expand on. So either call me or call Dani, because I definitely want to move forward with that kind of conversation in regards to when you're talking about in the systems, what are you speaking of? Are you speaking of the court systems and what's going on there? Are you speaking of the systems of when an individual goes into treatment and getting them a bed? So that's something. Come have coffee with us. Reach out to either Dani at the number she gave, or you can always call me at 978-701-7709. Because that's something that I think all of us would enjoy learning more from you. I am new licensed therapist. Okay, so that's the Jody. All right, and Jody, I see that your email's there, so I will reach out to you within 24 hours because that'll be there. And we're going to have this conversation, and especially that you're a new therapist. We always can use them for sure. But any lasting things that you can think of? I know March 6th, this Monday, is Black Balloon Monday. I think of shopping.
It's almost Friday.
So if you have lost a loved one or want to show support, put a black balloon out at your facility, just to show that just decrease the stigma. There's no shame in an illness, that we're all battling for sure. And if you're struggling, seriously, please reach out. There are way too many resources to not be able to have the opportunity to get help that you deserve. And as I was leaving work today, there was a huge thing on the news about recovery homes stealing millions of dollars, and these 2 men were arrested today. And that's another thing I really want to bring to the public's attention. Just don't Google a sober house. Like, reach out to us, reach out to your local police departments, find out who they vet, who they've walked through to see for sober living. There are some homes that are not ran appropriately that I wouldn't send someone to, and they may even be MASH certified, but I still may not send someone there. So do your homework. Don't just think that you need sober living, or let's just call here, because you're too embarrassed to reach out and ask someone the question. Pick up the phone, ask questions. Between the 3 of us and everyone that we work with, we know lots of places for individuals to go to that we would highly recommend for both mental health and also for substance misuse. So I want to thank you both again for your time, for being here.
Thank you,
I love
Cole.
you guys. And this will be up and running. You can share it with everyone. And Lou, I want to say thank you for your time and effort being here. And Phil Leahy will be joining us in 2 weeks. I don't know who his guest is, but he will be here 2 weeks from tonight. If you need us, reach out. You're not alone. And until next time, good night, everyone, and God bless. We'll see you soon.